Under the blinding lights of the Ireland's Got Talent stage, a young Filipino boy named Jomar stepped forward slowly, his tiny figure almost swallowed by the grand theater surrounding him. He came all the way from Tondo, Manila, a place where cracked pavements, rusty rooftops, and crowded alleys were more familiar to him than polished floors or velvet curtains. His clothes were simple, an old hand-me-down shirt, slightly faded, and a pair of slippers that had survived more rainy seasons than any child's footwear should. His voice had once echoed across the narrow streets while he sang for loose coins, hoping each day to help his mother buy rice or keep the electricity running for just one more night. Now, standing here, everything felt unreal. The stage stretched endlessly. The audience murmured with curiosity. And the judges watched him closely, sensing both fragility and something extraordinary buried beneath his timid expression. Jomar's hands trembled as he touched the microphone. He had never held one this expensive. Most of his singing was done using old karaoke machines with loose wires or borrowed speakers in a neighbor's sari-sari store. One judge, Aisling, leaned forward, her eyes locking onto the boy with gentle concern. She whispered something to her fellow judge Connor, who nodded, as if already bracing for a moment that could break every heart in the room. Jomar inhaled deeply, his chest rising and falling like he was trying to hold in all the years of struggle he had lived through. The music cue began, the opening guitar of Hotel California, soft but haunting, drifting through the air like a memory. The audience fell silent. Even the cameraman paused, sensing something rare. As the first word left his lips, his voice shook lightly, filled with an honesty that no training could ever teach. He sang the lines as if each one carried the weight of surviving Tondo's hardships, the late nights selling candy near stoplights, the mornings helping his mother wash clothes, the times he fell asleep hungry yet full of dreams. His voice, though young, carried a depth that stunned the judges. It wasn't perfect, it was better, it was real. Every note felt like it came from somewhere deep within, somewhere scarred yet still shining. Judge Aisling's eyes softened, glistening with emotion. Connor swallowed hard, unable to hide the lump forming in his throat. The audience leaned closer, captivated by the fragile strength in the boy's trembling voice. And as Jomar continued, unaware of the tears he was causing, it became clear to everyone watching that this wasn't just a performance. It was the story of a child who had carried his world on his shoulders and was now singing his heart into a room that finally listened. As Jomar continued singing Hotel California, something shifted in the air, a kind of fragile magic that only happens when a child pours his entire soul into a song. Midway through the performance, the camera zoomed in on his face, revealing the quiet storm building behind his eyes. His voice, carrying the weight of years far beyond his age, trembled as memories of Quezon City flashed through his mind, nights spent singing outside jeepney terminals, hoping for a few coins, mornings when he woke up before sunrise to help his mother sort through recyclables, evenings when the sound of distant karaoke machines was the only comfort after long, exhausting days. Each line of the song peeled back another layer of his struggle, and though he tried to stay strong, his voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the raw truth he could no longer hold inside. The audience gasped, not because the note broke, but because it was perfect in its honesty. Judge Aisling lifted her hand to her mouth, her eyes widening as tears threatened to spill. She had seen confident singers, trained performers, and technically flawless musicians, but she had never seen a child like this, someone who wasn't performing to impress, but simply telling his story through melody. Beside her, Judge Connor blinked rapidly, fighting the emotion rising in his throat. His voice lowered into a whisper that barely made it past the microphone. "He's singing from a place most adults never reach," he muttered, as if speaking too loudly might disrupt the fragile miracle unfolding on stage. The boy's small shoulders shook as he pushed through the chorus, his voice soft yet strong enough to fill every corner of the theater. The audience leaned in, as if trying to protect him, to hold him up with their silent admiration. Every father, every mother, every person who had ever known hardship felt something inside them crack open. His pain was universal, his courage unmistakable. The music swelled, wrapping around Jomar like a warm embrace he never got often enough in life. His eyes glistened. He sang the next verse as if offering the last piece of his heart to a world that had rarely shown him kindness. And as his tiny voice echoed through the hall, it felt less like a performance and more like a confession, of hunger, of hope, of survival, of dreams too big for the cramped alleys he came from. When he hit the final phrase of the chorus, the audience rose to their feet without waiting for the song to end. The judges stood too, unable to remain seated, their tears falling freely. Jomar, unaware of the emotional wave he had unleashed, kept singing with his head slightly bowed, holding nothing back. At that moment, he wasn't just a poor child from the Philippines. He was a voice the world needed to hear. When the final note of Hotel California drifted into silence, the theater seemed frozen, as if everyone had collectively held their breath, not wanting to disturb the fragile beauty of what had just happened. Jomar stood on the stage, small and overwhelmed, unsure how to respond to the thunderous applause and standing ovation that surrounded him. His hands trembled and his chest heaved with exhaustion and emotion. This was a world far removed from Tondo or Quezon City, far removed from the alleyways and crowded streets where he had sung for spare change. The judges leaned forward, their faces streaked with tears, reflecting the raw intensity of the moment. Judge Ashling, unable to contain herself, rose from her seat and slowly descended the steps toward him, tears streaming down her cheeks. You are the most soulful voice we have ever heard," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of genuine emotion. "You sang for every child who has ever been unseen, every heart that has ever been overlooked." Jomar looked up, eyes wide, his lips parting in disbelief, unable to fully comprehend the praise. He had never been called talented or special before. The world had mostly seen a poor boy struggling to survive, not a singer capable of touching souls across continents. Judge Connor wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, shaking his head in awe. He whispered to the other judges, "I've seen hundreds of performers, but nothing like this. This boy's voice, it's beyond talent. It's humanity." Jomar's small frame quivered as the golden buzzer gleamed above the stage, ready to rain its golden light down upon him. The moment it exploded in a cascade of sparkling lights, he dropped to his knees, sobbing, overwhelmed by disbelief and gratitude. The audience roared, their cheers mixing with cries, swept up in the emotional storm he had created. Every person in the room could feel the journey he had traveled, from singing on rain-soaked streets to standing in front of an international stage, finally being seen and celebrated for the beauty of his voice and the depth of his heart. Backstage, production staff, crew members, and fellow performers watched, equally moved and speechless. Cameras captured every tear, every trembling lip, every breath caught in awe. Jomar's song had done more than entertain. It had created a moment of shared humanity, a bridge between struggles and dreams, between the streets of Tondo and the glittering lights of Ireland. The judges, still emotional, exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that this was a once-in-a-lifetime performance. And as Jomar looked up at the shining golden buzzer, his tears flowed freely, not just for the moment, but for the countless days of hardship and hope that had led him here, to a world that had finally recognized his voice, his courage, and his soul. In that moment, He was no longer just a poor boy from the Philippines. He was a symbol of resilience, a testament to dreams that refuse to die, and a reminder that sometimes, the purest music comes from the heart that has known the most pain.